What is going on, Fight Feeders? Welcome back to Fite Feed. Today, I am breaking down one of the could be the most historic cards that we've seen in a very long time. This is UFC 322. We're going to be breaking down the entire card, starting from the very first fight of the night, going through the entire card to the main event. Guys, this card has shaped up to be one of the best cards that I've seen. I'm going to knock on wood. And this is coming from someone who was there in person at UFC 300. This card definitely matches up close to that, if you want my honest opinion. We've got a legendary main event between Jack Della Maddalena and Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev moving up from lightweight. Believe he holds the record now for most title defenses in the lightweight division. And now he's going to scrap it out with Jack Della to see if he can take the welterweight belt from the pretty newly minted champion of the welterweight division in Jack Della. And guys, we've got an amazing co-main event, similar situation. We got Zhang Weili moving up from the strawweight division to challenge Valentina the ballerina Shevchenko. That's not her nickname, but anyways, Zhang Weili is going up to try and steal the 125-pound belt from the Bullet. And this is a great matchup, guys. We got the Magnum versus the Bullet. And then, before that, we've got some crazy welterweight matchups, guys. We've got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales, which is one of the best fights I've seen and also a very hard fight to break down and actually decide on. And then before that, we've got Carlos Prates versus Leon Edwards, guys. This card, that is just, those four fights are legendary in and of themselves, but then we've got the return of one of my favorite prospects, Malcolm Wallmaker. He has looked absolutely amazing. Some crazy power on him. It's going to be very interesting to see how he matches up against Cody Haddon, who's also a very solid fighter in that division. So it'll be very fun to see who comes out on top there. And then for some of you who might be excited for Bo Nickal, he is back as well on the prelims at least. It'll be interesting to see how Bo does. I got to give Bo some respect. He's a 96 baby like me, so shout out to Bo on that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he matches up against Rodolfo Vieira, who's obviously going to have a lot of different tools in his bag that he can bring to that fight. Overall, guys, an amazing fight card. Don't want to forget anybody. I gotta throw my guy RoboCop in there because he's also on this card and he's always fireworks when he gets in the octagon. Make sure to give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go ahead, guys, and dive into the first fight of the night. All right, guys. First fight of the night, fight number 1 on this card. We've got Chepe Mariscal versus Pat Sabatini. Chepe Mariscal is 33 years old, 5'7" with a 69-inch reach. 18-6 professional record, 5-0 in the UFC. Chepe has 7 wins by knockout. That's a 39% knockout rate. 3 wins by submission, a 17% submission rate. 8 wins by decision, a 44% decision rate, giving him a 56% finishing rate overall. Chepe has 3 losses by way of KO, which make up 50% of his total losses. He also has 3 losses by way of decision, making up the other 50% of his total losses. Taking a look at Chepe's last 4 fights, we got a sea of green here. He's got a win over Ricardo Ramos, a win over Damon Jackson, a win over Morgan Chadier, and a win over Jack Jenkins. Pat Sabatini, on the other hand, 34 years old, 5'8" with a 70-inch reach, 20-5 as a professional, 7-2 in the UFC. Pat Sabatini has 1 win by way of KO, a 5% KO rate, 13 wins by way of submission, a 65% submission rate, 6 wins by way of decision, a 30% decision rate, giving Pat Sabatini a 70% finishing rate overall. Pat Sabatini has lost 5 times. 3 of those losses came by way of knockout, giving him a 60% KO loss rate, and then he's lost twice by way of decision, giving him a 40% decision loss rate. Taking a look at Pat Sabatini's last 4 fights, he has a win over Joe Anderson Brito, a win over Jonathan Pierce, a loss to Diego Lopez, which actually I think also happened at Madison Square Garden, and then a win over Lucas Almeida. Jumping into strengths, weaknesses, and keys to victory for Chepe and Pat Sabatini. So Chepe, guys, is he is just an all-around gritty fighter. The guy comes out there to just go to war every single time. I've been very impressed with Chepe's ability, not only on the feet, can he hang pretty well. He stays in there from a striking perspective, but very good on the ground, actually. Not only in just getting top control and ability to like advance positions on the ground, but I think also just throwing up those submission attempts and mixing things up on the ground. But I think also on the feet, very gritty, always in the opponent's face, pushing the pace. I think Chepe Mariscal is actually one of those like low key type fighters that people might not know of. The guy is always in a dogfight, and it's always fun to watch him go. I do think that Chepe Mariscal he's not the greatest of strikers, right? Like if he goes in there with someone who's super technical, they can definitely, beat him in the technicality standpoint. But I do think that Chepe's ability to kind of mix things in, also a very good chin on Chepe as well. I just think he's one of those guys that his striking doesn't need to be perfect because of the way he fights. He's always on the front foot. He's trying to mix things up with the opponent, and also has a good fight IQ in his ability to mix those takedowns in when the opponent might not be ready for it. But he's also very good at chain wrestling with his opponents. Like once he gets to a takedown attempt, he doesn't stop. He keeps chaining to that takedown to see if he can get that guy to the ground. Pat Sabatini is also a very solid fighter all around. He has good fundamental boxing and also very good ground game. We saw that against Joanderson Brito. Got him down the entire fight and just held him there. Did a really good job with that. Also had a good fight IQ there too. I do think that what makes this fight interesting is that Pat Sabatini brings a certain level and acumen from the grappling perspective. He obviously has a lot of submission wins as well. So this fight is really going to kind of break down to, in my opinion, just based on how both these guys fight, I think it's going to break down to who has more grit and can hang in there. And guys, I think seeing Sabatini, obviously he does have very good skills, especially just the fundamental boxing skills, his ability to get takedowns and top control on the ground. I don't think that Chepe nor Pat are going to be able to really outclass either one, the grappling. I could be wrong, but based on how these guys fight, I see Chepe being a bit more dangerous on the ground because he has those sneaky submission attempts that he can throw up, but he's also very gritty on the feet. I do think that Chepe has more of that finisher in him and in his ability to find those finishes on the feet, where I think Pat Sabatini, it seems just looking at his stats, the odds of him finishing someone on the feet are very low, given he's only got one KO in his entire career thus far, whereas Chepe has a bit more of a mixed bag there in his submissions plus his knockouts, right? So in this fight, I got to go with Chepe Mariscal. I think that he is just a grittier fighter when it gets down to it. I think if the going gets tough, the tough get going, as they say, and you've got Chepe, I think, is going to be that guy that gets it done on the night of. I could see this one likely going to decision, but I think if there is a finish, I could see Chepe getting a KO win over Pat Sabatini. That is my pick. On to the next one. The next fight on the card, fight number 2, we got Baisengu Sousa Kiev versus Eric Makoni. Baisengu's 24 years old, 6'2" with a 79-inch reach, 10-0 as a pro, 1-0 in the UFC thus far. Sousa Kiev has 8 wins by way of knockout, an 80% KO rate. He has 1 win by way of submission, a 10% submission rate, and 1 win by way of decision, a 10% decision rate. Taking a look at his losses, Sousa Kiev has lost 0 times, so we don't have to break anything down there. Taking a look at his last 4 opponents, got a win over Eric Nolan, which was his actual debut in the UFC. If you guys don't know, Sousa Kiev stepped in on very short notice, only a few days after getting the win that you see below Eric Nolan, which is against Murtaza Talha. That was on Dana White's Contender Series this previous season, and on that Tuesday, he got the call to join the card on UFC. I think it was UFC 318 or 319 with the Khamzat Chimaev card in Chicago. Sousa Kiev goes out there, gets a finish, he got a finish. That was his submission win over Eric Nolan. Prior to that, he fought guys that I don't know and can't really say their names. Eric Makoni, on the other hand, 35 years old, 6 feet tall with a 77-inch reach, 10-3 as a professional. He is 1-1 in the UFC thus far. Makoni has 4 wins by way of KO, a 40% KO rate, 3 wins by way of submission, a 30% submission rate, 3 wins by way of decision, a 30% decision rate. Makoni's lost 3 times in his career. All 3 of those losses have come by way of KO, giving him a 100% KO loss rate. Makoni's last 4 fights, he got a win over Cody Brundage. It was a short notice fight for both men, and he did a great job. He was able to get the job done there. Prior to that, a loss to Nursultan Ruzaboyev. That was his debut, which I also believe was on short notice, if I'm not mistaken. Prior to that, a win over Jerome Hatch and Tyler Ray. Guys, in this fight, so the strengths, weaknesses. So Sangat, with what I've seen, he obviously is still a young fighter. We did see him get tested in his last matchup against Eric Nolan. Eric Nolan, the former Marine. Shout out to Eric Nolan. Thank you for your service. Sangat did a great job, though, because although he got tagged a few times, I think Sangat has very good striking on the feet, very good at counterattacks, very good straight punches that he's able to match up and line up on his opponents, getting a lot of KOs that shows in his stats. But he also has that elite level ground game. This guy is from Chechnya. He's close friends with Chimaev. I saw him grappling with Khamzat Chimaev. This dude can grapple whenever he needs to use it. And when I look at Eric Makoni, although he is from fighting out of Arizona, and I gotta give props to my hometown guys, I think that Makoni in this matchup, what's tough here is he does have very good boxing and he has very powerful punches, but I do think that in the mixing things up side of this, he is on the losing end, right? It's going to be very hard for him, I think, to stand up to or match the grappling that Sangat could bring in. I do think that the key to victory for Eric Makoni is he's got to find a big shot. He's got to try to hurt Sangat very early on in this matchup. If not, if he allows Sangat to kind of own the distance or the range of this fight, it's probably very likely that Sangat is going to be able to line up something on the feet where he could either hurt Eric or mix in those takedowns and probably just overwhelm him with the ground pressure. I do got to pick Sangat to get this one done. I do see him getting it done by way of KO, but I'm going to be rooting for Eric Makoni. He's a hometown guy. I got to root for my hometown, and I got to root for, well, it's not my hometown, but where I moved, but I got to root for Americans. So I'm rooting for Eric. Get it done, man. Prove me wrong. All right, guys, the next fight number 3, you got Angela Hill versus Fatima Klein. Angela Hill is 40 years old, 5'3" with a 64.5-inch reach, 18-15 in her professional career, 13-15 in the UFC. That is crazy that she's got that many fucking fights. 5 wins by way of KO, a 28% KO rate, 1 win by way of submission, a 6% submission rate, 12 wins by way of decision, a 67% decision rate, giving Angela Hill a whopping 33% finishing rate. This Angela Hill loves to get them decisions, guys. Taking a look at Angela Hill's losses, she's lost a lot, but she's lost 15 times. 2 of those losses came by way of submission. The rest of those losses came by way of decision. So she has 2 losses by sub. That is 13% of her losses. The other 87% of her losses came by way of decision, which is 13 decision losses. Her last 4 fights, she got a loss to Yasmin Lucindo. Before that, a win over Ketlin Sousa. Before that, a loss to Tabitha Ricci. Prior to that, a win over Luana Pinheiro. Fatima Klein, on the other hand, 25 years old, 5'6", with a 67-inch reach, 8-1 as a professional, 2-1 in the UFC. Fatima Klein has 4 wins by way of KO, giving her a 50% KO rate, 1 win by way of submission, a 13% submission rate, 3 wins by way of decision, a 38% decision rate, giving Fatima Klein a 63% finishing rate overall, 30% more than that of Angela Hill, but a lot less fights. Fatima Klein's only lost once in her professional career. That was by way of decision, and actually was in her debut in the UFC, where I think she took a short notice fight against Jazz Duvicius, and that was a really solid showing from her because she usually fights obviously at strawweight, not flyweight, but she did take that fight on short notice, fought someone a lot bigger than her, and I think had a good showing, but Jazz Duvicius pretty clearly won that one. Prior to that, and then when I look at her last 4 fights, a win over Melissa Martinez, guys. She knocked Melissa Martinez out with a beautiful, I think it was a question mark kick. Before that, a win over Victoria Dudakova. Like I said, prior to that, her first loss to Jasmine. And then prior to that, a win over Andres Romero. Taking a look, strengths, weaknesses, keys to victory for Angela Hill. Angela Hill, guys, is like the unk of the strawweights, okay? She's obviously up there in age, but she is so crafty and still very solid Obviously, you've seen in her record, although her record's, not the greatest, Angela Hill can go out there and give anyone in this division a hard time, especially we've seen her do that with even some of the harder hitters, if you will, in like Ketlin Sousa. Gave her a very tough time, was not able to allow Ketlin Sousa to find any success, really. So Angela Hill's whole game, though, is very like high volume striking, continuously throwing things out there. She has output that just goes for days. It's like a Marab type style. Very good cardio on Angela Hill. She can like push that pace for probably 15 rounds if she needed to. A very good experience, great footwork, and obviously experience, 18 and 15. She's got 13 and 15. What is that? 28 fights in the UFC. Like, that's a lot of fights, okay? So she's got a lot of experience that she's bringing to the cage. Her weaknesses, she can be susceptible to those heavier power shots. I also just think that now that she's getting up there, she's 40 years old, she's going up against someone who's going to have a significant youth and probably speed advantage. And I think Fatima Klein is also someone who is not necessarily like a heavy power puncher, but she has a very crispy technical striking that I think is going to be a problem for Angela Hill. I also think that from a size perspective, Angela Hill can sometimes be on the opposite end of that, where she has just less physicality than her opponents do, and that is also likely to be something that's in this fight. I think for Angela Hill to get the win here, guys, it needs to be a crafty Angela Hill performance. She's got to go out there and do what she does, right? Using her jab, mixing things up, switching stances, maybe mixing in like potential level changes. I don't want Angela Hill to be in like a ground exchange, though, because Fatima Klein, obviously very close friends, training partners with Erin Blanchfield. She's going to have a lot of submission skills that she can pull out here. So I think that Angela Hill has to do her best to pace the fight and just go in and out of range when she's looking to attack, not giving Fatima Klein any wiggle room there, right? Fatima Klein, on the other hand, guys, like I said, very technical striker. She landed a beautiful question mark kick to knock out her last opponent badly. Very good in the striking, but also very good at mixing things up on the ground as well. I do think that because Fatima Klein has a lot more finishes, it will be interesting to see how she handles Angela Hill, especially if she doesn't get an early finish. I think that perhaps her gas tank could be tested, especially by someone who's got the pace and output of Angela Hill. So I would say that's probably a weakness there. And obviously, if we're going to look at other weaknesses, she did get, out physicality against Jasmine Jasdavicius, but that was up a weight class. So I'm not really worried about that in this fight, guys. I think that Fatima Klein, keys to victory for her, close the distance quickly, and just, dictate the pace of the fight. If she cuts off the cage and gets Angela Hill on the back foot, Fatima Klein's like clearly going to win this fight, in my opinion, because she'll have Angela Hill kind of out of her box and just be able to land with whatever she wants and then mix in the grappling when she needs to, because I do think that Fatima Klein is likely to be the better in the grappling department here. I got to go with Fatima Klein getting this one done by way of decision. Fight number 4 on the card, we got GM3 Gerald Meerschaert, one of my faves, and the return of Kyle Daukaus. He was previously in the UFC. I used to watch him, and I actually said in one of my videos, where the hell has this guy been? Then he suddenly pops up, KOs Michel Pereira. Very happy to see Kyle Daukaus back. I do really like his style. I like that he's able to mix things up. He's a good fighter. Gerald Meerschaert's 37 years old, 6'1", 77.5-inch reach. It's crazy. I feel like Gerald Meerschaert should be older than 37, but he's not. 37 wins, 20 losses, and he has a 12-12 record in the UFC. Meerschaert has 6 wins by way of KO, a 16% KO rate, 29 wins by way of submission, a 78% submission rate, 2 wins by way of decision, a 5% decision rate, giving Gerald Meerschaert a 95% finishing rate, guys. That is how you get that shit done in the Midwest. Shout out to GM3. Guys, to have the amount of fights that GM3 has and have a 95% finishing rate is honestly bonkers. So give this man some flowers. Taking a look at Gerald's losses, okay? 5 losses by way of knockout, a 25% KO loss rate. 9 losses by way of submission, a 45% submission loss rate. 6 losses by way of decision, a 30% decision loss rate. Gerald Meerschaert's last 4 fights got a pretty bad loss to Nickal Olszewski, a loss to Brad Tavares, and a loss to Rainier de Ridder. I thought he was beating de Ridder, but then he just let de Ridder outgrid him there. And then a sneaky surprise win over Edmund Shabazian prior to that. Now, Kyle Daukaus, second go at the UFC, 32 years old, 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, 16-4 as a professional, 3-4 in the UFC. Daukaus has 2 wins by way of knockout, a 13% KO rate, 11 wins by way of submission, a 69% submission rate. And guys, Kyle Daukaus' nickname is the Darce Knight, okay? Like he's got that Darce choke. Giving Kyle Daukaus, and then Kyle Daukaus has 3 wins by way of decision, a 19% decision rate, giving Kyle Daukaus an 81% finishing rate overall. That is also really solid, especially, 20 fights in. Really good to see. Kyle Daukaus has 2 losses by way of KO, which is 50% of his total losses, and then 2 losses by way of decision, which is the other 50% of his losses, giving him a 50% loss rate by KO and decision. Kyle Daukaus on a 5-fight win streak, if I'm not mistaken. So last 4 fights, you got to see a green here. Win, a huge win, coming back to the UFC over Michel Pereira. No one picked him to win that fight, at least on my pick tracker. He goes out there and starches him out beautifully. Before that, a win over Kenan Patershuk. Before that, a win over Sean Connor Fallon. And before that, a win over Greg Ellis. Kyle Daukaus' brother, Chris Daukaus, used to fight in the UFC as well. Chris Daukaus got the My Brother's Keeper tattoo on the chest. Shout out to the Daukaus brothers. Guys, this fight, so Gerald Meerschaert, we already know, absolute fucking dog, Midwest dog, Gerald Meerschaert. Guy goes out there and just scraps it out. I think, obviously, a lot of miles on the tank, though, for Gerald Meerschaert, although 37, not the oldest guy, but definitely he's been in there quite a bit, as you could tell by his record. He's got a very elite submission game. If things hit the floor, it'll be a very fun scrap because I think both these guys are skilled on the ground. Gerald Meerschaert, though, has a scrappy and craftiness to him, okay? Like, very good grappler when it comes to not just like the wrestling, but even just in these high-level exchanges on the ground. He is very good at mixing things up, very good at hunting that submission, as you could tell. I think he's got the most submission wins, if I'm not mistaken, or he's like close. I think Charles Oliveira still holds that title, but Gerald Meerschaert he's got a few records in the UFC. He's also got a pretty active guard too. So if Kyle Daukaus hurts him, he can be a bit scrappy there and on the back as well. I think the weaknesses for Gerald Meerschaert, he has an awkward striking style, guys, that I think at times can actually be a benefit to him. But I feel like as of lately, we haven't seen much success from Gerald there. And I do think that that's going to be a big hole in the game, especially up against Kyle Daukaus. Kyle Daukaus seems to have found a pretty nice mix with his hands lately. Obviously, he got a KO win over Michel Pereira, who is more so, you would think he's more of the hammer than the nail, but Kyle Daukaus caught him and put his lights out. So I think that in this matchup, Gerald Meerschaert's going to have some weaknesses on the feet. I think the keys to victory for Gerald is trying to close that distance and mix his grappling game in and try to be more offensive with his grappling, trying to catch Kyle Daukaus in some type of trouble there, right? Because if Gerald Meerschaert it proves to be the better grappler, he could easily mix things up then and likely get a finish on Kyle Daukaus. Now, Kyle Daukaus, on the other hand, like I said, he's got very good ground game himself, very good at jiu-jitsu, very strong wrestling. We've seen him go up against other guys like Kevin Holland. I know that they had like a weird headbutt situation in that matchup, but I do think that Kyle Daukaus is going to be he's going to be the bigger fighter here, in my opinion. Maybe not physicality-wise, because Gerald Meerschaert is pretty big for 6'1". I think Kyle Daukaus is going to be a bit taller, right, and maybe have a little bit longer reach. I think no, Gerald's got the longer reach, guys, but it's a bit deceiving, though, because I do think that Kyle Daukaus is going to have longer legs. So I think that although Kyle Daukaus doesn't have the greatest striking, I think he will be at an advantage here. I think that if he is able to mix that up with his grappling. Also, I would like to see him be using those teep kicks, using his longer legs to keep the range, but then mixing things up when he wants to, right? Not allowing Gerald to dictate when those grappling exchanges happen. I just think that Kyle Daukaus is likely to have a better gas tank over the course of 3 rounds, in my opinion. Could be dead wrong. Although I love Gerald Meerschaert, guys, I got to go with Kyle Daukaus winning this one. I think him just having, 5-year youth advantage here. He lost in the UFC, got cut, and then he went on a pretty huge run on the regional scene. 5-fight win streak right now. He won a belt and defended it a couple times on the regional scene. I think Kyle Daukaus has a bit of momentum here, and we're kind of seeing, I think, the downtrend in Gerald's career. No fault to his, guys. Everybody has their time. I do think that Gerald Meerschaert, though, guys, I don't know what the odds are, if you're looking for a crazy underdog pick, you're not wrong in throwing one of those out there for a Hail Mary, because Gerald Meerschaert has every opportunity to potentially get a win in this fight, especially if it's a heavy grappling type fight. Gerald Meerschaert definitely shines in that realm. Fight number 5 on the card, we got Malcolm Wallmaker versus Cody Haddon. I fucking cannot wait to see this fight. This is going to be a sick fight, guys. Malcolm Wallmaker's 31 years old, 5'10", a 71.5-inch reach, 10-0 as a pro, 2-0 in the UFC. Malcolm Wallmaker has six wins by way of KO, a 60% KO rate, 2 wins by way of submission, a 20% submission rate, and 2 wins by way of decision, a 20% decision rate, giving Malcolm Wallmaker an 80% finishing rate overall. He has 0 losses. Sorry for the weird looking formula. This is Excel, so you know how it goes. Taking a look at Malcolm's last 4 fights, he's gotten 2 Looney Tune type KOs over Chris Matinho and Cameron Simon. I gotta say, guys, that Cameron Simon KO, if you guys ever want to go back and watch my breakdown of that one, it's one I'm really proud of, because it was just as I started doing breakdowns, I said, guys, the way that Malcolm Wallmaker throws that lead hook, I'm like, he's going to catch Cameron Simon coming in, because Cameron Simon kind of does that blitzkrieg offense, as Lucas Tracy would say, where he's kind of just running in like with the straights. He's doing like the running kung fu straight, and Malcolm Wallmaker landed that hook and just sent him to the ether. It was bad, like flatlined him. Huge KO. Before that, wins over a couple guys that I'm not really aware of, but Malcolm Wallmaker clearly on a streak here, 10-0. But he's going up against Cody Haddon. Cody Haddon's 27 years old, 5'7" with a 69-inch reach, 8-1 as a pro, 1-0 in the UFC. Haddon has 5 wins by way of knockout, a 63% KO rate, 2 wins by way of submission, a 25% submission rate, 1 win by way of decision, a 13% decision rate, giving Cody Haddon an 88% finishing rate overall. Cody Haddon only has 1 loss in his career. That was by way of decision. His last 4 fights, got a win over Dan Argueta. Prior to that, a win over a couple guys that I'm not really aware of either. Billy Brand, Paul Lope, Raja Shippen. Didn't even know there was another person named Raja other than Roger Jackson. Taking a look at the strengths, weaknesses, keys of victory, Malcolm Wallmaker, guys, is not only an athletic striker, but he has just got amazing boxing fundamentals, amazing speed, good pace, very aggressive pressure, but he has this unnatural amount of power, I think, especially being a 135-pounder. This dude, he puts dudes lights out. Like when he knocked out Chris Matinho, he had Chris Matinho kiss the canvas, right? Like this dude can bang, okay? And it's a mix of his timing, his speed, very good with selecting his shots, but he's got that really good timing. I think his timing is a big thing that opens the avenues to get these KOs, okay? I do think that although he's so good on the feet, he does have moments where he can be hittable on the feet, but not very much. I do think that one thing that is a bit weary on Malcolm Wallmaker, at least from my purview as a fan, I just haven't seen him in too many like significant ground exchanges, so I just don't know where he's at from a grappling perspective. But I do think that Chris Matinho really tried to push that on him, and he bullied his way out of that. So it's not that it's like he can't grapple. I haven't seen it or seen him really be tested there. So I think that would be one thing to call out as a weakness potentially against someone like Cody Haddon, who seems to mix things up a bit in that realm. I think the keys to victory for Malcolm Wallmaker, guys, is keeping that space and just winning this fight on the feet. Especially, I know Cody Haddon has a bit of a chin on him, but I do think that Malcolm Wallmaker has a different type of power, guys. Like if he lands a shot, it's likely that he could put the lights out, okay? Cody Haddon is also a very technical striker with good timing, good counters. He's also very good at strong takedown defense. Not that he has to worry about that here. I think he's also composed, has a good fight IQ. I do think that for Cody Haddon, he's not going to have that same punching power as Malcolm Wallmaker in this matchup. He definitely has enough power in the hands to make a difference, but it's not going to be a difference maker the way that the hands and the power of Malcolm Wallmaker's will be. I do think that if he is pressured, well, weakness I've seen, like especially against Argueta, like if he gets pressured, I think Cody Haddon can sometimes start to make mistakes, which is going to be a big issue, especially going up against someone who's a sniper like Malcolm Wallmaker. I think that the way for Cody Haddon to win is potentially trying to test the grappling skills of Malcolm Wallmaker. I think he's going to want to close that distance, try to mix in some of these grappling exchanges, not only to limit the amount of danger and power coming his way from Malcolm, but also testing that grappling, seeing where he matches up, because that could be a realm of success for Cody Haddon, guys. In my opinion, though, I've got to go with Malcolm Wallmaker. I do think that although he's beat guys that are not as well tested in the UFC, if you will. I know Cameron Simon had a crazy run, but lately he's been getting knocked out a lot. I just think that the power of Malcolm Wallmaker, the speed, the timing, I think it's all going to play in his favor here. I see him knocking Cody Haddon out, to be honest with you guys. I see it happening probably in round 2, but could happen in round 1. Fight number 6, we got Aaron Cold-Blooded Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. Tracy Cortez, shout out to Phoenix. She's from the Maryvale, Phoenix area. Not only she stays here now, but she lives somewhere else in the valley, as they say. So shout out to Tracy Cortez. Aaron Blanchfield's 26 years old, 5'4" with a 68-inch reach. She is 13-2 as a professional, 7-1 in the UFC. Blanchfield has 2 wins at way of KO, 15% of her wins, or is a 15% KO rate. 4 wins by way of submission, a 31% submission rate. 7 wins by way of decision, a 54% decision rate, giving her a 46% finishing rate overall. Aaron Blanchfield has 2 losses in her career. Both came by way of decisions. She is 100% in the decision loss rate category. Last 4 fights for Aaron Blanchfield, she got a win over Rose Namajunas, which was a long time ago, because Macy Barber unfortunately had a seizure in the back, so they couldn't fight back on May 31st. Before that, Aaron Blanchfield lost pretty clearly to Manon Ferro. Prior to that, a win over Talia Santos, and then a win over Jessica Andrade. Tracy Cortez, on the other hand, 31 years old, 5'5" with a 65.5-inch reach, 12-2 as a professional, 6-1 in the UFC. Tracy has 1 win by way of KO, an 8% KO rate, 1 win by way of submission, an 8% submission rate, 10 wins by way of decision, an 83% decision rate, giving her a whopping 17% finishing rate. It's really 16%, but I bet it's a rounding thing. Tracy has 2 losses in her career as well. 1 of those came by way of submission, so the 50% submission loss rate, and 1 by way of decision, a 50% decision loss rate. Tracy's last 4 fights, she got a win over Vivian Araujo. As if you guys remember that, Vivian Araujo was bitching her ass off, like being a little fucking, we're not going to go there. Prior to that, a loss to Rose Namajunas. Before that, a win over Jasmine Jadzavicius. That's a really good win, actually, for her. Prior to that, a win over Melissa Gatto. If we're doing MMA math, Blanchfield's going to win, right? Taking a look at Aaron Blanchfield, Tracy's strengths. Obviously, Blanchfield, guys, not the greatest in striking, but one of her things that she has is a very good fight IQ. She's a finisher. She's cold-blooded in there. She goes for finishes. A very, very world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu athlete. She is very good in not only the submission game, but sweeping game, just very good on the ground. If things hit the floor, it is not looking good for Cortez, in my opinion. I do think some weaknesses for Blanchfield. Sometimes she can be a bit slower to start. I also think on the feet, she has a bit of like an awkward striking style where, I don't know, it's like I don't see much finishing ability from her on the feet, in my opinion. I don't see her like really posing much of a threat with her hands. I think the keys to victory for Blanchfield, closing the distance, getting Tracy to the ground. And obviously Tracy's got good grappling and wrestling, but it's not going to be the type of wrestling that Blanchfield's going to bring, or not wrestling, but jiu-jitsu game that Blanchfield's going to bring. So I think if Aaron can close that distance and just get Tracy to the ground in a dominant position, I think Blanchfield could easily potentially latch up submissions or just win over control. Cortez, on the other hand, she does have a strong, aggressive wrestling style. She has ties to Henry Cejudo, like from back in the day. Definitely has a good grappling, good wrestling game. A very good top pressure and ground control. But what I worry about, guys, is I don't think that, and I'll just say one more strength. Tracy has probably better, more like gritty boxing. She's from Maryvale. It ain't easy out in Maryvale, all right? So like, I think that they have different upbringings, and because of that, Tracy Cortez is going to have a bit of that grit with that boxing, if you know what I'm saying. But I do think that when you look at the weaknesses, I think that although Tracy has good grappling, I just don't know how she'll be able to fend off those offensive grappling attacks, especially the submission threats that Aaron Blanchfield's going to bring on the ground. I also don't think that Tracy is a very big finisher on the feet herself. So outside of just like potentially landing a fluke KO or something, I just can't see how Tracy out grapples Erin Blanchfield, in my opinion. She could prove me wrong, but I just think Erin Blanchfield is very skilled when it comes to that. That's what makes that like Macy Barber Blanchfield fight very interesting, is that I think Macy Barber has a bit more of that like finishing ability on the feet that I don't think Tracy has in this matchup. Could be wrong, although, you know, Tracy, I'm going to be rooting for Tracy. She's coming from Arizona. I got to root for her. But I do think Erin Blanchfield's going to get this one done. I don't necessarily see her finishing Tracy. I could see it being like Tracy gets out of some really closely latched up submissions, but it goes to decision. I think Blanchfield wins by way of decision. Fight number 7 on the card, we got Roman Kopylov versus Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop. Kopylov is 34 years old, 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach, a 14-4 professional record, 6-4 in the UFC. Kopylov has 12 wins by way of KO, an 86% KO rate, 0 wins by way of submission, a 0% submission rate, 2 wins by way of decision, a 14% decision rate, giving Kopylov an 86% finishing rate overall. Kopylov's got 2 losses by way of submission, which is 50% of his losses, and then 2 losses by way of decision, the other 50% of his losses. Last 4 fights for Kopylov, he lost a close, not really close, fight to Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa went out there and just put that eraser on him. And honestly, guys, no one picked Costa to win on the pick tracker, but yeah, we all got an L on that category. Prior to that, a win, a last-second win. Literally, the fight ended at 4 minutes, 59 seconds of the 3rd round. He got a KO win over Chris Curtis, a win over Cesar Almeida before that. Prior to that, a loss to Anthony Hernandez. RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez, 33 years old, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach, 17-6 as a professional, 8-3 in the UFC. RoboCop has 10 wins by way of knockout. That's a 59% KO rate. 4 wins by way of submission, a 24% submission rate. 3 wins by way of decision, an 18% decision rate, giving Gregory Rodriguez an 82% finishing rate overall. Super fun fight, guys. These guys are finishers. Gregory Rodriguez has 4 losses by way of KO, a 67% no-loss rate, and then 2 losses by way of decision, a 33% decision loss rate. Gregory Rodriguez had a crazy knockout win over Jack Hermansson not too long ago. He flatline KO'd Jack Hermansson, which was surprising because that has not happened in a long time. I don't think even Cannonier did that either. I think it was like some ground and pound. Prior to that, RoboCop almost got a KO over Cannonier, but he gassed out and Cannonier knocked him out. So there you go. Prior to that, a win over Christian Leroy Duncan, and then a win over Brad Tavares. So really solid wins there off 2 guys that are pretty scrappy in this division. Guys, the strengths and weaknesses here, I think Roman Kopylov is a very fundamental, beautiful type of striking with his kickboxing. Very solid kicks. Like we saw him get a highlight reel KO over Brenson Ribeiro. He is a very good kickboxer. I think he also fights out of the southpaw stance, so it could be a bit tricky there. Now, weaknesses though, Kopylov, although Russian, guys, his grappling is not that great, okay? Like, he got mauled by Anthony Hernandez, and just looking at his record, no wins by way of submission, I think that when we look at his weaknesses, I think also on the feet, I feel like when he's not able to get the finish or close that fight out with a strike, he kind of is just very patient to a fault, right? Where like Paulo Costa's walking him down the whole time, it just landing on him. And the second he gets hurt, his entire game completely changes. Now, Gregory Rodriguez, on the other hand, this dude's got nukes in his fucking hands. This is why you call him RoboCop. He is bad, dude. He's a bad dude when he's in that octagon. Not only does he have that one shot KO power that could put the lights out, he also has a decent enough grappling acumen where I feel like in this fight, guys, those weaknesses of Kopylov, I think Rodriguez will be able to exploit because he can mix in the grappling and likely get a stoppage on the ground as well. He's also going to have a physicality advantage in this matchup. I really just don't see, other than Kopylov landing a crazy type of like fluke KO, like a head kick or something, I don't see how he beats Rodriguez, given the physicality advantage, given the grappling acumen, but then also that one-shot KO power. I think RoboCop has this one in the bag, guys. I'm picking him to win. I could see him getting a win by way of KO, because he has that type of power where, although Kobilov's never lost by way of KO, I could see Rodriguez landing that shot that does it. But in this matchup, I'm actually thinking RoboCop gets a submission in round 1. That's what I'm calling. Fight number 8, we got Bo Nickal versus Adolfo Vieira. Bo Nickal's 29 years old, 6'1", with a 76-inch reach. He is 7-1 as a pro, 4-1 in the UFC. 2 wins by way of KO, a 29% KO rate. 4 wins by way of submission, a 57% submission rate. 1 win by way of decision, a 14% decision rate, giving Bo Nickal an 86% finishing rate overall. Bo Nickal's got 1 loss by way of KO. We saw he got the battering ram body knee from Rainier de Ritter. Before that, a pretty lackluster performance and win over Paul Craig. Prior to that, a finish over Cody Brundage. Prior to that, a finish over Val Woodburn. Adolfo Vieira, on the other hand, 36 years old, 6 feet tall with a 73-inch reach, 11-3 as a professional, 6-3 in the UFC. Vieira has 1 win by way of KO, a 9% KO rate, 9 wins by way of submission, an 82% submission rate, 1 win by way of decision, a 9% decision rate, giving Adolfo Vieira a 91% finishing rate overall. Adolfo has lost by way of submission 1 time, a 33% submission loss rate, and then 2 times he's lost by way of decision, a 67% decision loss rate. Last 4 for Adolfo Vieira, a win over Tresean Gore, lost to Andre Petroski. Prior to that, a win over Armin Petrosian. Prior to that, a win over Cody Brundage. Guys, this fight, strengths, weaknesses, I think we all know. I mean, Bo Nickal, guys, I have to say, Val Woodburn knockout was decent, but that was short notice. Made me think that Bo Nickal might have some hands. After watching our fight, I am worried about the hands of Bo Nickal because I feel like all he was doing was spamming the overhand right or left. I think he's a southpaw. He did not seem to have any answers for using or mixing up those strikes on the feet. So honestly, Adolfo Vieira is also pretty lackluster on the feet as well. Like, it's hard to say. I think Bo might have the better striking, but neither one of these guys are the greatest strikers. On the ground, I think that Bo Nickal is going to bring an ability to just get that top control and potentially just hold Adolfo Vieira on the ground. But Adolfo Vieira does have that submission ace type ability. But guys, in this matchup, I just feel like this is going to be like a smudge fest kind of. I could see Bo Nickal just kind of laying the law down and just getting top control. Maybe getting some type of submission. I don't want to see Bo getting into any submission exchanges because Adolfo Vieira is going to have that higher level jiu-jitsu. But I see Bo likely just kind of getting control on the ground. Maybe getting off some shots on the ground. I don't really see it ending in the KO, but it could happen. But I do see Bo Nickal at least getting a win by way of decision. That is going to be my official pick. Bo Nickal by decision. Not really, honestly, super hyped for this one, but it'll be fun to watch. Fight number 9. We're finally on the main card. Make sure you guys give this a like. Give it a subscription if you can. I would appreciate it. Let's go ahead and dive into fight number 9. We got Beneil Dariush versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Benny is 36 years old, 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, 23-6 as a pro, 17-6 in the UFC. Benny has 5 wins by way of KO, a 22% KO win rate, 8 wins by way of submission, a 35% submission rate, 10 wins by way of decision, a 43% decision rate. Taking a look at his, giving Benny a 57% finishing rate overall. Taking a look at his losses, 5 losses by way of KO. That's 83% of his losses, or 84%. If you want to get I guess it's 83 because it rounds down. 1 loss by way of submission, a 17% submission loss rate. Last 4 fights for Benny, he got that win over Renato Moicano. He did get dropped early on. Prior to that, a loss to Arman Sarukian and a loss to Charles Oliveira. Before that, a big win over Mateusz Gamrot. BSD, Benoit Saint-Denis, 29 years old, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, a 15-3 professional record, 7-3 in the UFC, 4 wins by way of KO, a 27% KO rate, 11 wins by way of submission, a 73% submission rate, 0 wins by way of decision. That means BSD has a 100% finish rate. You fucking love to see it. BSD is a dog. BSD has only lost 3 times, but the 2 of those losses came by way of KO, a 67% KO loss rate, 1 loss by way of decision, a 33% decision loss rate. Last 4 fights for Benoit Saint-Denis, a huge statement winning performance over Mauricio Hufi, who everybody and their brother thought was going to just go out there and dust BSD, myself included. BSD gets the job done. So happy for him because this dude is just, he's a banger. 100% finishing rate. Tells the story. Prior to that, a win over Kyle Prepelec. Before that, a stoppage loss to Renato Moicano. That was a bloody one. And then a KO loss to Dustin Poirier. I have to say, I felt really happy because I picked Dustin in that one. Guys, in this matchup, I see Benoit Saint-Denis winning this one. And the reason why is I think that both these guys share a pretty similar skill sets when it comes to grappling. I think Beneil Dariush actually might be the more skilled or like better wrestler and grappler, whereas BSD is going to have some of those submission threats, though. They both do offer up quite a bit of high-level submission threats, but in my opinion, I think that Beneil has good striking too, but I think Benoit Saint-Denis, the big difference maker here, is going to have more power, and I feel like Beneil Dariush has shown, although he showed a great ability to recover against Renato Moicano, I think that his chin is pretty gone at this point. Like, we saw him get shut off by Oliveira. He got shut off in like one shot by Arman Sarukian. Yeah, I just worry about that, guys. And I feel like Benoit Saint-Denis, over the course of 15 minutes, is going to either be able to latch up some type of submission or likely land some like head kick on the feet potentially that puts Beneil down. I see Benoit getting it done by way of KO, honestly. That's going to be my pick for this one. All right, guys, fight number 10. We've got Leon Rocky Edwards versus Carlos Prates. Leon's 34 years old, 6'2" with a 74-inch reach, 22-5 as a professional, 14-4 in the UFC. Leon has 7 wins by way of KO, a 32% KO rate, 3 wins by way of submission, a 14% submission rate, 11 wins by way of decision, a 50% decision rate, giving Rocky a 45% finishing rate overall. Taking a look at his losses, Leon has 1 loss by way of submission, came in his last fight against Sean Brady. That is 20% of his losses. 3 losses by way of decision, a 60% decision loss rate. Taking a look at his last 4 fights, he had a loss to Sean Brady. Prior to that, a loss to Bilal Muhammad. Prior to that, a win over Colby Covington. And prior to that, a win in the rematch over Kamaru Usman. Carlos Prates, 32 years old, 6'1" with a 78-inch reach. Very long reach for this weight class and his height. 22-7 as a professional. 5-1 in the UFC. Carlos Prates has 17 wins by way of KO and a 77% KO rate, 3 wins by way of submission, a 14% submission rate, 9 wins by way of decision, a 9% decision rate, giving Carlos Prates a 91% finishing rate overall. Taking a look at his losses, Carlos Prates lost 2 times by way of KO, a 29% KO loss rate. He lost 3 times by way of submission, a 43% submission loss rate, and 2 times by way of decision, a 29% decision loss rate. Guys, this matchup is a super fun one. I do see, although Leon Edwards has that very technical kickboxing style and from that southpaw stance, but the ability to switch stances, this is a striker's delight. You know, I don't think we're going to see takedowns unless Leon Edwards potentially mixes it in. In this matchup, I do think that Leon Edwards is being slept on quite a bit. I think that he has a very good skill set on the feet, very good range at owning distance and range, very good at, he can do the point type style, right? Where similar to Ian Gary, I think he can implement a similar game plan that Ian Gary did. I think what I worry about against Carlos Prates, though, is it's just a matter of when Carlos can find the chin. And I also don't know that Leon carries the same power in his strikes that Ian Gary does. I think that Ian Gary, like when you just look at him from a size perspective, he was landing those heavy shots on the left arm of Carlos Prates, kind of shutting that down for the first few rounds. I don't know that Leon Edwards will be able to do that because I think Leon Edwards can be very hesitant on the feet, whereas in the fight against Ian and Carlos, I feel like Ian was guns a-blazing from the start. I did a very good job in those first 3 rounds against Carlos Prates. I see Carlos Prates just moving forward, using that Muay Thai style that he brings to the cage. He's a very ferocious finisher. He's going to look for the finish. He's going to look to put hands on Leon Edwards. I see Carlos Prates, guys. I see him getting this one done by way of KO. And I know that might be shocking because Leon's never been knocked out, but Leon's had a tough go, and this is a very tough matchup, a tall task. I could be dead wrong. And I also want to say, for any of you guys that might be Leon fans, Leon has every opportunity to potentially win this fight. He could even knock Carlos out potentially because Leon Edwards gets slept on quite a bit. I just think that this is a matchup that it doesn't favor him well, given his current situation, coming off a couple losses. Carlos Prates has kind of reinvigorated his confidence there with a big win over Jeff Neal. I think Carlos Prates has more dangerous attacks that he can mix in that will likely favor him getting the hand raised on the night of. Like I said, I'm going Carlos Prates by way of KO. Don't know which round. I would say likely that it would be the later rounds. I'll say a round 3 KO from Prates. Fight number 11 on the card, we got Sean Brady versus Michael Morales. Sean Brady's 32 years old, 5'10" with a 72.5-inch reach, 18-1 as a pro, 8-1 in the UFC, 3 wins by way of a 17% KO rate, 6 wins by way of submission, a 33% submission rate, 9 wins by way of decision, a 50% decision rate, giving Sean Brady a 50% finishing rate. Brady's got 1 loss by way of KO. That's his only loss. It was a standing TKO from Belal Muhammad. Canelo hands, right? 100% of his losses. His last 4 fights, he got a win, a huge win over Leon Edwards. Prior to that, a win over Gilbert Burns. Prior to that, a domination over Kelvin Gastelum. Prior to that loss to Belal Muhammad. Michael Morales, on the other hand, 26 years old, 6 foot tall with a 79-inch reach. Very long reach. 18-0 as a professional, 6-0 in the UFC. Morales has 13 wins by way of KO, a 72% KO rate, 2 wins by way of submission, an 11% submission rate, 4 wins by way of decision, a 22% decision rate, giving Morales an 83% finishing rate overall. 0 losses for Michael Morales, who's coming in with a lot of momentum here. Last 4 fights, he got a statement KO round 1 in and over Gilbert Burns. Before that, a win over Neil Magny. Before that, a win over Jake Matthews. Prior to that, a win over Max Griffin. These are solid wins, especially Jake Matthews. Guys, this one, it was a really tough one to break down. I think the strengths and the weaknesses, obviously, guys, Sean Brady is an absolute beast when it comes to the grappling. I think that his ability to flow with those transitions on the ground is just second to none. Like, if he gets Morales to the ground, I think that the chain style of Sean Brady, this stickiness on the ground is going to be a big problem. I don't think that Morales will have that same type of success in the stand-ups as he did against Gilbert Burns. He got taken down once by Gilbert, but he got right back to his feet. It'll be hard to do that against Sean Brady because I think Sean Brady is still young and has that athleticism where he can flow around, right? He can flow like water around the body there and stop Michael Morales, chain those takedowns, maybe chain a back take too. So Sean Brady, I think, guys, it's a matter of like him getting inside the range, which he's good at. He's very good at parrying from his opponents, quick in and out head movements. The thing that I worry about, though, in this matchup is, like, I know that Sean Brady may have had things going on against Belal, but to get hurt on the feet and then knocked out by Belal, who's not a power puncher, that worries me, right? When you're going up against a guy, Michael Morales, who has very good footwork, very good timing and precision with those strikes. We saw him land some big shots on Gilbert Burns, and I think he's very strong. I think he has like a build where he's not the tallest welterweight, but he's like stocky at that 6-foot frame, and that 79-inch reach is a beast to get past. He also, Michael Morales, fights very good at range. He's very good at using that range, and even just the way he's able to throw those hooks. In this matchup, guys, I gotta say, I am favoring Michael Morales. I do think that if this hits the ground, that this is Sean Brady's fight, but I'm picking Michael Morales to get this one done. I could see him actually catching the chin, Sean Brady, and hurting him. I think he might win by way of KO, but I'm going to be rooting for Sean Brady as the American fighter here. Also, he's somewhat of a hometown guy right there by Madison Square Garden. He's from Philadelphia. So I am rooting for Sean Brady, but I do think Michael Morales might be able to get this one done by way of that KO. Could be wrong. Rooting for Sean. Let's go, Sean. All right, guys, fight number 12 on the card. We got Valentina, the Bullet, Shevchenko versus Zhang Magnum Weili. This is a fun matchup, guys. Valentina's 37 years old, 5'5", with a 65.5-inch reach, 25 wins, 4 losses in her professional career, 14-3 in the UFC. Shevchenko's got 8 wins by way of knockout, a 32% KO rate, 7 wins by way of submission, a 28% submission rate, 10 wins by way of decision, a 40% decision rate. Taking a look at her losses, Shevchenko has lost 1 time by way of KO, 25%, 1 time by way of submission, 25%, and 2 times by way of decision, a 50%. Her last 4 fights, she had a statement title performance over Manon Fiorot, where she just outclassed her the entire time. think she won pretty clearly, in my opinion. Prior to that, a win over Alexa Grasso, which was also a very handed win, but it was not a very fun performance. Prior to that, a draw to Alexa Grasso, where Shevchenko should have got the W, in my opinion. Prior to that, a loss to Alexa Grasso. Zhang Weili, on the other hand, 36 years old. This is funny, guys. A lot of people were like acting like Zhang is so much younger than Shevchenko, which I find hilarious because they're a year apart. But Zhang Weili's 36 years old, 5'4", 63-inch reach. 26-3 as a pro, 10-2 in the UFC. Zhang Weili has 11 wins by way of KO, 42% KO rate. 8 wins by way of submission, a 31% submission rate. 7 wins by way of decision, a 27% decision rate, giving Zhang Weili a 73% finishing rate overall. Zhang Weili has 1 loss by way of KO, 33.3% of her losses, and 2 losses by way of decision, 67% of her losses. Taking a look at Zhang Weili's last 4 fights, she's got a win over Tatiana Suarez, which is a huge win for her. Prior to that, a win at UFC 300, saw that one live against Yan Xiaonan. Guys, I have to say, the reactions from a lot of fans in the Yan Xiaonan fight, I've said this before, but everyone acted like Zhang Weili like absolutely smoked Yan Xiaonan, but I think they forget Yan Xiaonan knocked Weili down several times in that fight. And like, from my perspective, it looked like she was going to knock her out cold at some point. But obviously, I think Zhang Weili was able to win in the grappling. She did have that moment where she almost completely, like, Yan Xiaonan was out cold from that submission, but the round ended. Anyways, Amanda Lemos before that, which was a huge performance there, and then a win over Carla Esparza. This one is a fun one, guys. It might not be that fun because these are 2 technical fighters. I gotta say, guys, my pick, I haven't missed yet with Valentina Shevchenko. I have to go with Shevchenko in this one, and the reason why is I think that a lot of people, for some reason, are skewing this age thing. They're saying Valentina's washed. They're saying she's too old. Like, Zhang Weili's similar in age, but I think while Valentina's not much bigger, I think Zhang Weili might be she's going to be the stronger, more physical fighter. I do think that Zhang Weili is going to have problems with the footwork and the technical striking ability that Valentina brings to this fight. I know Zhang Weili has leveled up immensely, especially in her striking. She is dangerous. But guys, if you really boil this down, go look at who Zhang Weili's fought. I would say the only person that she's fought, or woman that she's fought, that is close to the technical ability of Valentina Shevchenko was Rose Namajunas, who Zhang Weili was unable to beat in 2 separate outings. That is going to be a similar case here. I think Valentina Shevchenko, although not as aggressive on the feet as she used to be, she is extremely technical, very, very good with her movement and her footwork. I just think that Valentina also gets slept on for her ability to grapple and her ability to mix things up on the ground. Valentina is a very good fighter wherever the fight goes. I do think that if this turns into like a bit of a dogfight, I could see Zhang Weili getting the upper hand there, because I do think that because Valentina's had so much mileage in terms of her defenses and things of that nature, I think that a dogfight probably favors Zhang Weili. But guys, in this matchup, I could see Zhang Weili winning, but really I think that Valentina will be able to mix things up better on the feet. She's going to have that reach advantage, and I think Valentina is very good at using her technical striking ability, especially her Muay Thai, to just I think she's going to just win a unanimous decision over Zhang Weili by way of beautiful striking, mixing in the takedowns when she needs to. I can see Zhang Weili also getting a bit tired as these rounds get to the later parts of the fight, whereas Valentina Shevchenko seems to stay fully in there with a 100,000 gas tank the entire time. Zhang Weili could potentially, guys, like I said, I don't think it's wrong to pick Zhang Weili here because I think she has ways to win this fight. It's just, for me, I think when I look at the styles and I look at who Zhang Weili's fought, these other women she's fought are nowhere near the technical ability of what Valentina brings. And when you consider that Valentina just got that huge win over Manon Fiorot, who's a physical specimen for that weight class, a lot bigger, taller, stronger, and Valentina picked her apart and did her job. And I think that shows a lot in her ability to potentially pick apart Zhang Weili here. Not that Zhang and Manon are the same type of fighter. I just think that Valentina is going to be more skilled and has more ways to mix things up. But Zhang Weili is the magnum, guys. She has that ability. She could land a big shot that puts Valentina down, which could really change the course of the fight and potentially change things in her favor. But I'm picking Valentina Shevchenko by unanimous decision. All right, guys, the main event of the evening, we've got Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev for the welterweight gold. This is going to be a fucking crazy fight, guys. Make sure, throw a like on this, subscribe. We would really love if you guys subscribe. Let's dive into fight 13, Jack Della Maddalena versus Islam Makhachev. Jack Della's 29 years old, 5'11", with a 73-inch reach. He is 18-2 in his professional career, 8-0 in the UFC, 12 wins by way of KO, a 67% KO rate, 2 wins by way of submission, an 11% submission rate, 4 wins by way of decision, a 22% decision rate, giving Jack Della Maddalena a 78% finishing rate overall. Jack Della has 1 loss by way of KO, 50% of his losses, and then 1 loss by way of submission, the other 50% of his losses. He lost his first 2 fights as a pro. He's now on an 18-fight winning streak. Last 4 fights, Jack Della proved them all wrong, got a huge win over Belal Muhammad. I'm happy I picked him there. Prior to that, a win over Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, and Basil Hafez. Islam Makhachev, one of the best to ever do it, the best lightweight that we've seen. 34 years old, 5'10", a 70.5-inch reach. 27-1 as a professional, 16-1 in the UFC. Should he win this fight, I believe he will tie Anderson Silva's record for most wins in a row. He has 5 wins by way of KO, a 19% KO rate, 13 wins by way of submission, a 43% submission rate, 9 wins by way of decision, a 33% decision rate, giving Islam Makhachev a 67% finishing rate overall. Islam has 1 loss, and that was by way of KO. That's 100% of his losses. His last 4 fights, he got that short notice, last-minute win over, not last-minute win, he won it in the first round, over Renato Moicano, a win before that over the legend in Dustin Poirier. Prior to that, 2 wins over Alexander Volkanovski. I don't think he won the first fight. Anyways, guys, this matchup is as good as it can get. It is the tale as old as time when it comes to MMA, grappler versus striker. And I've gone back and forth. What I'll say is that obviously we know the strengths that both these guys bring. If you guys want a detailed breakdown, go watch my Jack Della Maddalena breakdown. I went through all his finishes on my channel, showing some of the technical ability on the feet. Jack is so good at mixing up the level changes and also mixing up his stance switching. I think that footwork with the stance switches and his volume, his pace, I think Jack Della Maddalena's striking is going to bring a lot of issues for Islam in this fight. Now, with that said, Islam's striking is going to bring problems for Jack too, because, guys, if Jack is worried about the takedown the way he was against Belal, I think that if Islam is given the opportunity to land the way that Belal did, I do worry about how Jack takes those strikes, because I think that from a striking perspective, although Belal has leveled up quite a bit, I do think Islam is going to be a bit more powerful in the strikes, and he has a way deeper bag with the kicks and things of that nature. Where we all are very interested, though, is Jack has shown great takedown defense against Belal and a great ability to get back to his feet, but how is he able to do that against Islam? That is the age-old question that we are all so intrigued by this matchup for. We just don't know until we know, right? Is this going to be a fucking Khamzat versus DDP? It could be, right? We don't know. I thought DDP would be able to get up from the ground, and he got smothered. But guys, I think in this matchup, the things that I worry about for Islam, he's 34, which is not old, but when you consider that age difference from Jack, and then also this is a weight class, although, you know, everyone's like, oh, he trains with middleweights, and he hasn't fought at welterweight, so you worry about, like, how does that look for him over the course of 5 rounds? Whereas Jack is in his weight class that he is comfortable in, he's the champion. I gotta say, guys, Islam, very good fighter, like one of the best to do it. I just don't know how it's going to be for him at welterweight from a gas tank perspective. If he doesn't find a submission in the early rounds, does that gas tank last him all the way through 5 rounds? Can he stay sharp from getting hit and connected on? As we saw, guys, Jack just continuously is going. Round 5 of his fight against Belal, for instance, he has already pretty much got the fight in the bag, but he lands a shot that busts the lip open of Belal Muhammad. So Jack Della Maddalena is going to bring this from start to finish if Islam's not able to get him out of there. He's also going to have a decent reach advantage. I feel like in this matchup, Jack is going to be a quick start, and Islam's going to be playing catch up. So, in my opinion, I see Jack Della Maddalena winning this one, guys. And I see him winning it by way of decision. I don't really see a finish happening, but I could see Jack winning by way of decision. But I also have seen in my head Islam potentially just getting the better of Jack on the ground and getting a sub. So it's very hard. I've gone back and forth, but I'm rooting for the Aussie, and I'm going to vote for Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. I think that Jack Della Maddalena gets this one done, guys. I think he gets it done by way of decision. That is going to be my pick, and that is my predictions pick video for UFC 322. Thank you if you've made it this far. If you've made it this far, comment Aussie, Aussie, Aussie below. It's okay if you misspell it. Just Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. If you comment that below, I'll know you watched this far, and you'll be entered to win a small potential holiday gift from Fite Feed. So make sure you guys comment that if you see this. Thank you so much for your support. Truly appreciate all of you. It's super hot in here. I'm going to get out. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next one.